G'day guys, it's Tom here with MYT Solar. Today's video we're going to be looking at a new air conditioner product which we're super excited for. Our customers are always wondering when they get one of our systems in with a lot of solar on the roof, a lot of battery power, they get that they're going to be equipped to be off grid and run a lot of things, but they want to know, am I going to be able to run the air conditioner? Unfortunately, the factory air conditioners that come on RVs typically are absolutely power hogs. So CountryMod Pro has sent us one of their air conditioning units. Now this air conditioning unit is actually a 24 volt unit, so we don't even really need to use the inverter for this. They also make a 12 volt unit. Our battery bank on our 19 MKS is a 24 volt battery bank, which in my opinion is even better. So we've got a 24 volt air conditioning unit. This video, we're going to basically do a little review of the unit. We're going to take you through some of the steps of the install, and then at the end we're going to really put it to its tests and compare it to the factory air conditioner. I was really excited when I saw this product, and then I was more excited when CountryMod Pro reached out and said that they'd be willing to send us a test unit, because we really do want to test this unit. We've seen it all over the internet lately, but we want to make sure that it actually is a great product. It does what everybody else is saying that it does, and it does draw a little amount of power, because that's really what we're chasing. So let's go and test it out. Please don't forget to subscribe, comment, like the video. That really helps us and motivates to keep putting these videos out. It's a bit of a construction zone in here at the moment. We've finally got to work in upgrading the electrical system on this 19 MKS, which I know a lot of people are pretty excited for, so stay tuned on that. But let's talk about the air conditioner, because that is really what we're trying to think about. So here is the factory air conditioner. It's a Coleman. I can't remember if it's a 13.5 kBTU or a 15 kBTU, but it's a pretty big, powerful air conditioner, especially for the space of this 19 MKS. One of the problems, as I talked about, is it's an absolute hog. So we wanted to replace that with this CountryMod Pro unit. Now the CountryMod Pro unit is only a 10,000 BTU unit. So we didn't necessarily think that it alone was going to be sufficient to completely replace our 120 volt air conditioner, especially when sometimes we'll probably have plug-in power. So we didn't want to reduce our cooling capacity. So what we've decided to do is we're going to actually install the unit where the bedroom max air fan is, because luckily for air conditioners and for max air fans, it's usually a 14 by 14 square cutout, which means that the CountryMod Pro will fit on that cutout from the max air fan. So what we're going to have to do first is just remove that max air fan, clean up all the butyl, and get it ready to set. So with this max air fan out of the bedroom here, we now have a big hole in our ceiling. This is the wires that existed before. So this is just the power and ground circuit for it's actually for a few lights here in the bedroom, but it was also for the max air fan. So with that removed, we just Wagoed these together to make sure we got our lights back. Now let's talk about this orange and white wire here, these MYT looking wires. So this was an absolute headache. I always stress to our customers when they want certain things done, I'm like, running wires can be such a pain after this RV is put together. So, you know, a lot of the factory stuff gets run when the RV is just a shell. It's just some studs, no roof, no walls. That's when they run a lot of the wiring. It's one of the first things they do at the factory. So for us to come in when this thing is all glued, screwed, and patched together, and it's a nice, tight, well-made, well-stuffed with insulation, it's a very well put together rig, which unfortunately makes it a little harder for us to run wires. So we wanted to run this wire directly to our batteries. You can see we kind of followed the pathway that the max air fan wires came through, and we snaked and snaked, and we tried and we tried and we cried and we bled. And eventually we got the wires to our batteries, which are down in the pass-through. And I'll quickly explain why it was so difficult to get the wires down there. So our batteries are just on the other side of this front piece right here in the pass-through. And so we were coming down from the roof. One of the things we realized specifically with the 19 MKS, because we've ran a lot of wires through a lot of different trailers, particularly outdoors RVs, but one of the things I noticed with this 19 MKS is it doesn't have the full front cap like a Timber Ridge Backcountry Series, some of those other trailers would. And that full front cap means that you've got a nice big void to push wires through. In this situation, there is a aluminum beam, stud if you will, that runs all the way across. And so we were coming up and we were hitting the stud. We were coming down, we were hitting the stud, and I was just like, there's no way that we can get through there. So we had to remove our headboard off the bed. We had to do a lot of investigating to finally get to that beam, and we put a little hole through that beam so we could run the wires through the beam. And sure enough, there was a whole nother stud just below it. So hats off to Outdoors RV for making this thing so structural, but it made for a pretty bad day for us. So these are the power wires that came with the CountryMod Pro. It's 8-gauge wire, it's copper wire, it's good wire, and the length would have been really good for us. We ended up not using this, basically for a few reasons. One of the reasons was they included these fuses, which I've never seen a fuse like this before. I didn't really trust this fuse, if I'm honest, and I noticed that it was fused for 80 amps, which I'm not sure this 8-gauge wire really could handle over the distance that it was. So it probably was fine. I'm not saying you necessarily can't use it. CountryMod Pro is supplying it. But one of the other reasons why we didn't use this wire was we wanted to use our own fusing, because that's just part of our system down below. Additionally, I didn't have any 8-gauge lugs. We ended up using 6-gauge, and what was good about the 6-gauge was that we were able to skin it in our special skin, which made that fishing process a lot easier because it just reduced the friction. So we didn't use this. I'm not 100% sure about these fuses and whether I trust them. They just feel a little bit cheapy. So we did that on our own, our fusing on our own. So one other thing that we did while we were running wires for the CountryMod Pro unit is we also ran some wires for a 24-volt port on the roof that is going to power our Starlink. So we're going to have a mount for that Starlink, which I'm going to show you guys in a video here soon, so that our Starlink can be powered directly on the roof with 24-volt and can be used in motion. So when we opened up the CountryMod Pro here, there's a whole lot of bits and pieces, and to be honest, the instructions that identified those bits and pieces weren't awesome. I've installed a few air conditioners before back when we were doing repairs, and so I was thinking it would be pretty straightforward just from looking at the pieces, but this one's a little different. One of the things I found interesting is that the foam gasket that kind of creates the waterproof seal between the air conditioner and our roof and stops water from coming into that 14 by 14 hole, that actually, the instructions for that was to glue it around the hole on the roof. Usually that comes pre-installed on the air conditioner and you push the air conditioner down and line it up on the hole. This one we actually had to glue that gland around the hole, and I sealed that up a little bit. Alrighty, so just kind of going over what comes with the unit. Obviously the unit itself, we've already got that up on the roof. And here's the sealing assembly. So obviously filters, just like any RV air conditioner, that's the kind of clip-in filter part. And here's the main sealing assembly that has some control wires and stuff that will obviously connect to the unit up on the roof. A remote, some foam pieces. So these are going to be extra supports. Once that unit's down on the roof, these foam pieces will kind of block under there and support it from tipping one way or the other. Some bolts and nuts, so that's going to be to kind of suck the unit down. So this will be interesting because I know Outdoors RV has a pretty thick roof, so I'm hoping that the hardware is going to work with our rig. This was kind of one of the more confusing things that I saw in the user manual, because I was looking for 2 of these. It's kind of a 2-piece deal, and we'll see how that kind of ties in when we get up there. Some cable restraint. This is the control panel for the ceiling unit. Then here is the steel bracket, which will kind of go up into that hole and support that hole as we're bringing the air conditioner down onto it. So let's get into that part. So this is everything that came with it, apart from the unit, which we've already taken up to the roof, and the foam gasket, which we've already sealed to the roof. And of course, I showed you those power wires, which we inadvertently didn't end up using. So here we have the manual. The manual wasn't awesome, I'm not going to lie. I couldn't really follow the manual. I'm not saying I'm amazing, but I can usually follow manuals. This isn't, the photos and everything and identifying the individual pieces weren't that great. So we've got this placed down on the gasket. I'm sure we're probably miles away from being aligned. We'll have to go downstairs and finish that part of it. But I wanted to just talk about the physical dimensions of this thing. It's a lot different to the Coleman that it's not necessarily replacing, but it's a lot different to the other unit on the roof here. It's extremely wide. So this thing is about 32 inches across and about 32 forward. So it's almost a perfect square shape. That's something to keep in mind. Here are our rails here where we're going to have our solar panels. It's definitely a wider situation than normal. What's really awesome about it, and another reason we gravitated towards it so much, is that it's low profile. With our rails lifting our solar panels up off the roof, they're going to be basically in line with this thing. And I know some people like to go over air conditioners with their solar panels. We don't, but this obviously provides an option for that. Being that from the roof, it's really a little over 8 inches, 8¼ inches off the roof. So low profile, but a big kind of square that will stick out and could get in the way of some solar panels, maybe if you have a limited roof space on the edges of the unit. And just for some comparison here, the Coleman is only about 26 inches wide from the shroud, and that shroud pushes in a little bit. So much narrower. But let's talk about the height. This thing is almost 15 inches tall. And so definitely this we run into all the time is we want to put solar panels next to the air conditioner, adjacent to it. There's going to be times where that shadow is pretty significant enough to shade the solar panel in what would have been kind of a sun capturing part of the day. I am excited in a later video to replace this with another low profile unit. Stay tuned for that one. But I'm glad that the CountryMod Pro is that low profile sort of unit because I think that's important. So the instructions did talk about making sure a condensate drain was not falling into our roof area, which is important. I don't see that anywhere. I've had a pretty good look for it. So I'm going to assume that condensate drain is actually draining into the shell of the AC, which will mean it ends up on the roof, which is what we want. But that's a little concerning because it was specifically in the instructions. So what I might do once we get this thing installed is actually take the shroud off the AC while it's running and just make sure that condensate is not running anywhere inside of here, because we really want to make sure that that's running off of the roof and down our rain gutters. You can see here, we went down below, we were pretty far off, but you can see these riv nuts right here. So that's what our bolts are going to thread into, and so you can see we were pretty far off. This one was outside of the gasket, so that's a little help on how to line it up. These are basically going to be the inside corners of this foam gasket and that cutout. So we'll try again and we'll go downstairs and make a few adjustments and get this thing cinched down. So the instructions weren't our friend in this section. It says use M4 self-tapping screws to fix the air outlet of the indoor machine. And then it says the exact same thing for step 2. And the photos have got, yeah, it's just not awesome. But I know that this is going to basically, one of these, I'll have to figure that part out. One of these are going to actually screw up to the vents at the top here, and then this will be on the ceiling assembly. So when the ceiling assembly comes together, basically that is going to become the ducting. Now my hope is that our roof isn't wider than that, but we'll see. The instructions here show these arrows with screws and say to use these screws to get it in. There's a foam piece all over it, and so I was hoping that there was places for these screws to go. I've tried every different arrangement, and I've actually found what I think are holes, and I've been able to screw it up, but from what I can tell, you just have to screw this thing to the unit, and you may need to make your own holes. I watched a video from CountryMod Pro, and they showed only using these 4 screw holes to screw it up. And I tried that, and there is definitely no cutouts there because I peeled all the foam off. The online video is different than the instructions in terms of where to screw, but personally I can't find any pre-drilled holes in the rooftop unit, so I'm going to be making my own, and hopefully this thing is aligned where it needs to be. So this part's pretty frustrating, and honestly, unless I'm making a mistake, it just feels like this part maybe was a little cheaply done. So doing the same thing with the ceiling part is a lot more straightforward because you can see there's actually holes, pre-drilled holes. And I just wasn't feeling those at all on the thing up on the top. So I just kind of made them work. It's stuck there and it's not going to go anywhere. And I'm hoping this will just push it up, and maybe those screws weren't that important, but kind of a bit let down in that step. This will be a whole lot easier for us. So attaching this part to the ceiling assembly was easy. Attaching the corresponding part to the top part was not so easy. That was a bit of a snag, and we finally got it secured. Just kind of made our own holes as far as I can tell. But we ran into a really much bigger snag, and that was we finally threaded the bolts in here to see how that was going to work in terms of using the bracket and using the bolts and cinching the air conditioner down and squeezing down on that foam seal. And as you can see here, the roof on this outdoors RV is just way too thick. We need some longer hardware. So, you know, we've got a 1/2-inch ply roof and a nice big attic, which is kind of one of the nice things about this outdoors RV roof is there's a ton of insulation in there. with this wide roof, these bolts are not going to work. So we're going to have to reach out to CountryMod Pro and see what they have to say about the bolts. This shouldn't be hard because it's just literally some thread. However, one of the bigger problems, as you saw in the start of the video, when this unit goes up, this particular piece right here has to nest with this other foam line piece. And that is so that the air can come straight down and it doesn't short cycle. Because of the thickness of that roof, when this is all the way up, these two pieces aren't going to be mating. There's going to be probably a 1-inch gap around, so that air would just short cycle and it wouldn't be a very good review for the air conditioner. So I'm sorry we got this far in the video. This is going to actually have to be a 2-part video because I'm going to wait to hear back from CountryMod Pro and see if they have a solution. I think they should have a longer bolt kit. You're going to find this in a lot of RVs with thicker roofs. Often when you buy an RV air conditioner from one of the other manufacturers, they'll ask, do you want the long bolt kit or the short bolt kit? And so we've had to do that before. That wasn't an option with this. But one of the other problems I see is that this piece, unless I create my own kind of extension on it, tape some foam or some foil HVAC tape around it, I won't really trust that as much as I trust this because it's a pretty snug fit. And I can't, unfortunately, get this up, have the air conditioner on, and then really reach up there and tape around it and seal it once they're together. It kind of has to be, it's the pushing it up that's going to create that seal. So I wish that they came with this piece was just kind of extra long and we could cut it down a little bit ourselves. Often with a max air fan and things like that, the shroud piece is made to be long and you actually cut it to the thickness of your roof. So that would have been a nice feature which would have made sure that we got the test video done today. And now I'm going to be waiting for some replies. So please be patient. That'll be coming a part 2 video with this. We'll see what I end up doing for that solution and really test this unit. So I do apologize that this had to be a part 2 video. We really weren't planning on it, and so we weren't being misleading in the start of the video. I just want to keep it honest. We did hit this stopping point, and anyone who buys one of these units may run into this as well. Thick roofs are very common. Unfortunately, we won't be going camping anytime soon because we've got a giant hole in our roof. And unfortunately, we won't be able to get the rest of this video for a little bit until we hear back. But I want to keep it honest. Don't forget to subscribe so you can see the second part when we do finally come up with a solution, whether that's our solution or hopefully one that CountryMod Pro has. In the meantime, we're going to have other videos coming out. We're always doing this off-grid content. Don't forget to subscribe. Maybe we'll have a video coming out on the electrical system that's going to power this unit. So stay tuned, and thanks for watching.